Mr. Colleague, you mentioned in your opening remarks that you'd successfully refinanced a lot of debt, and I believe I heard you correctly that both the NatWest debt and also the Welsh Government debt. So I'm just wondering, as a first question, would that be the sort of £35 million with NatWest and then the 18 million commercial loan?
I think there was about 12 million outstanding to Welsh Gov, I think, yes. And the full amount of the NatWest.
Yes. And then I wonder then, you also mentioned that Goldman Sachs and HSBC had agreed to invest. Did they invest more than just to cover the previous debt? And if so, could you perhaps share with us that information and also perhaps the terms of that investment in terms of the length of time for the repayment and the rate?
Yeah, of course. So I'm doing a little bit of this from memory, and if I get it wrong, I'll go back on the record with you later if that's all right. So the core terms is it's shared roughly equally between Goldman Sachs and HSBC. Obviously HSBC being more local to us in Cardiff, they'll provide the main core banking facilities for us. We have a 50 million total debt from them with a 5 million for specific projects on the side of that, so 55 million in total. The terms are better than what we had before from Welsh Gov. By about 1 percentage point, I think. So, and this obviously changed. I think our terms are something like SONIA plus 2.75, I think, something like that. We have chosen to do, we were originally intending to refinance out for 10 to maybe 20 years. And we thought, and the reason why we approached Goldman's originally was because we thought we would get a better deal, longer term deal on the US paper markets. Because I think of largely some of the turmoil that we need to sort out first, we didn't think going to the US paper markets at this point in time for a 10-year or 20-year debt would be appropriate. So having taken some advice, we've done a refinancing for about 3.5 years, I think, which we see as essentially a bridge to get us through the next 3.5 years to enable us to make the investments we've committed to in this cycle. And, probably in 2 years, 2.5 years' time, we will start to go out and feel our way into a longer-term debt refinancing. And a part of that would be also to do probably some significant redevelopments on the stadium and related areas. So,
thank you. A couple of things, if I may, but thank you very much for that detail. You mentioned the stadium there, and I noticed that on Companies House is a charge on the 19th of January on that. Is that related to this financing deal with Goldman Sachs and HSBC? And then the 5 million that you say is effectively hypothecated, are you able to elaborate a little bit as to what those projects will be?
I'm not actually sure we've determined all those projects as of yet. And the other thing that's probably very relevant in terms of thinking about where you're going with that is we did a deal in November, I think it was, with Aramark as a new food and beverage catering supplier. And although some of the terms of that are commercial, they put a very substantial amount of money on the table to enable us to do improvements in the stadium to do with our food and beverage offering. And obviously that gets recaptured through their contract over a period of time. We won't get any of that done before the forthcoming Six Nations, but we hope before the Nations Championship later in this year, our fans will start to see some brilliant changes in terms of their experience in food and beverage in the stadium. One of the other stadiums that Aramark have is Everton, which is, we visited some of the other ones that Aramark have done in the competitive tender that we put out. So I think you'll see a big improvement and very positive from fans.
I very much hope so. But the 3.5 years is obviously not where we'd want to be. And I know that's probably not where the union would like to be either. I'm just interested if you are able to share a little bit more about the information and the business models, I suppose, that you would have presented to the investors in order to get them to invest. And specifically of interest, perhaps are there any ticket revenues targets or assumptions? And also sponsorship, because I think a lot of those deals are coming up. And how they might relate also to the structure of the professional game.
Yes, so we put in place a 5-year plan, which we shared with our 2 debt providers, and I spent many happy evenings on the phone to the United States talking to one of them around the detail of some of those plans, and there are obviously some significant uncertainties there. There's an arbitration which we're engaged in with Scarlets. There is the head injury litigation which we, together with World Rugby and the RFU, are engaged in. So we obviously had to represent fairly what was going on in those situations. Those 5-year plans were pretty detailed. They involved obviously revenue by source, and then our cost base, and then coming down to what we're very focused on now over the last 2 years, which is our earnings, so EBITDA. And then at that point in time, we make distributions to our professional clubs and also to our community clubs as well. So, but we do track that line. It might be worth us saying that an essential thing for us to actually commit to this refinancing was to take all of our regional clubs off what we call PRA, Professional Rugby Agreement 2023, because that agreement basically shared the economic risk of the union with the 4 professional clubs and had a guardrail in it that, I'm going to simplify it hugely for sake of time, meant that we could not earn any more than £1 million a year as a WRU going forwards, which, given when I certainly came into this role, we had a potential debt mountain of 30-40 million. If you could only make £1 million worth of income, not many people would be very interested in refinancing that level of debt with you because you couldn't afford to repay it. So getting all the clubs off PRA 2023 was an essential prerequisite to creating financial stability for the clubs going forwards. And I know there's been a lot of noise about that, but we could not have done the refinancing unless we'd actually had all clubs off PRA 2023 and onto a new professional rugby deal, which you obviously see us in the midst of negotiating over the next few months.
Thank you. And I promise the Chair I'll finish on this question very briefly. Perhaps you might be able to provide the committee in written form some of the detailed lines in the 5-year plan. But if I could ask you just now, in terms of your discussions with the debtors for this refinancing agreement, as far as the professional game is concerned, the number of clubs, what was the model presented to them? What is in the 5-year plan?
So there was a number for distributions to professional clubs,
okay.
Because when we started this process, we were assuming, I think, a different number of professional clubs than when we maybe got into the refinancing in detail, which was in November and December. But the number we focused on was the distribution number, because essentially that's what they were interested in. They weren't actually interested in how many, they were interested in what the level of the distribution was.
Right, okay.